glasses.
Fixed glasses.
One of the two. But let's talk about fixing the Cleveland Cavaliers now, guys. Game 1, we've talked about at length yesterday. 22-point lead with about 8 minutes to go. A collapse. Overtime was just as disastrous. But you got to look ahead. It is now time for Game 2. There's only so much time to dwell on the past because the Knicks and the Cavs are going back at battle tonight, 8 p.m. on ESPN. Jason, as you look forward to Game 2 tonight, knowing what happened on Tuesday night in Game 1, what adjustments, if any, do you think Kenny Atkinson and his staff have to make in order to leave New York with this series tied at 1 game apiece?
Don't blow a 22-point lead.
Great adjustment.
No, for 3.5 quarters, they did it exactly right. So what's the adjustment? Don't run out of gas at the end. Don't leave the ball in James's hands solely. And it was interesting. I was listening to, we can talk to Chris about this. I was listening to Kenny yesterday on the off day. And, of course, everybody wants to circle James as one of the problems, and he was. And Kenny thought he actually put more of the blame on sort of the backline defenders, the back row defenders, that they weren't where they were supposed to be. And, yeah, there was a couple blow-bys, and there's a couple things that Harden needs to clean up, but it wasn't just him. And, listen, it's never one guy. When you blow a 22-point lead, it's not one guy. But the Knicks were absolutely hunting him defensively. I don't know that Sam Merrill is really the option, that if that's really the counter that the Cavs want to go with, but that's who they had him on, and then the Knicks would just find the switch and get James onto Jalen Brunson every time. And Kenny was very honest yesterday about, like, hey, listen, we started a double, and then you give up the open 3, so do you live with a contested 2? Or do you give up the open 3? And even within the coaches, there was debate, should we start a double or not? So there is no great answer. Like, the Knicks are a really good basketball team, and they cause a lot of problems. And it's sort of you got to live with something.
Yeah.
And if you're not going to pull Harden off the floor, which, by the way, that also is an option. He played the entire fourth quarter and all of overtime.
Yeah.
So they're like, yes, we could talk about the timeouts. Yes, we could talk about substitutions and all that. But part of it, if you're going to listen to Kenny Atkinson, part of it is the back row defenders have to be in the right spots to provide help. And then the coaches just have to make decisions on, do you want to double guys or do you want to live with hopefully contested shots? Kenny said that the Knicks shots were in the 1 percentile.
Which is low, by the way.
That's the lowest end. Yeah.
100 percentile good, 1 percentile low. And they made a ton of shots down the stretch.
Yeah.
Some of which you live with.
Yeah, and that's the point.
Yeah.
I was on with Ken and Lama yesterday, and that was the point I was making. I was like, guys, the Knicks hit some really tough shots. And if they're going to hit those shots, there's nothing you can do because a lot of times the defense was where it needed to be, and they just made the shot, and that's a credit to Jalen Brunson and the rest of those guys. So sometimes you got to live with it.
1 percentile shots. Sounds like someone who completely gagged the game away would say, right?
I mean, two things can be true at the same time.
Yeah, no doubt. When you talk about adjustments, they have to mix up the ball screen defense because they're getting the matchup they want, and Jalen Brunson's eyes are this big, and then his stat line matches. So offensively, they got good shots, right? You needed more from Donovan, and would have liked to see a few more go in, but they moved the ball. They got good shots. They wasted a day where Dean Wade hit his shots.
Yeah.
There was another good Merrill performance. That's encouraging. So, you worry about the hangover more. I think from a basketball standpoint, for 3-ish quarters, the Cavs were more than fine. The offense flowed. I thought the ball movement was exceptional, regular season level. Got the shots you wanted, just melted on deep. One stop, one more bucket,
one free throw,
one whistle, one anything.
Yep.
So I do worry about the place jumping tonight if the Knicks come out hot. Because the Knicks did not shoot it well early in last week's game. But, from the flow of the game standpoint, the Cavs can win this game.
In terms of adjustments, first and foremost, I don't think you have to reinvent the wheel here.
No.
You were up 22 points with 8 minutes. The game plan that the Cavs staff put together to attack the Knicks and defend the Knicks, for the most part, worked. And we could argue and disperse, well, it didn't work the full time, and that is accurate because down the stretch, the Knicks took advantage. They made every shot. I thought changing the back-end rim protection based on how they're guarding screens is something they'll have to adjust tonight. But overall, the game plan that they came up with was probably a pretty good game plan considering they were up 22 points with 8 minutes to go before this epic collapse. When you look at individual adjustments they can make, I do think changing up coverage on the ball screens with Brunson is imperative. First and foremost, you don't have to concede the switches. There's no rule in the NBA rulebook. Adam Silver has not implemented this new rule that says If they set a screen to try and hunt out a certain mismatch, you have to give it to them.
Right.
Like, that does not exist. When Dean Wade's in the game, the Cavs, should not be just conceding that switch and allowing him to get Harden or Donovan or someone else on. Same with Strus. But then change it up, too, because if you do it every time, then the Knicks will be able to counter-adjust. I thought Mike Brown did a really good job taking out Hart and Mitchell Robinson late in the game and forcing that extra guy. They played Landry Shamet in their closing lineup because it put another shooter on the court, so the Cavs couldn't have someone just roam off and muck up the middle. And when they did that and they had to spread out, that's where some of the backline coverage that Jason alluded to earlier got exposed. I think having a better game plan for that Shamet or fifth shooter lineup as opposed to Robinson or Hart, and having either it be Mobley or Allen or Wade shift off another one of their shooters and come from the strong side so Brunson can't keep getting into his mid-range shot without having a bigger hand in front of him can help. Also set in some strong side help. We saw Toronto do it to Donovan and James.
Yeah.
We saw Detroit do it to Donovan and James. They didn't really do it much last night. They kind of soft doubled. They tried to soft double, and then they started hitting threes, so it never got into a real double. So trap and blitz Brunson. If you want to get out of his hands, get out of his hands early, and then be able to recover. And if Shamet, OG, Mikal Bridges want to shoot a three with 16 and 17 on the shot clock, live with those shots.
Right.
But I think making the necessary adjustments to confuse Brunson and show him different looks on the screen coverage is the one major adjustment they can make going into game 2.
It's a major adjustment they have to make, right? Yeah, I think the Cavs were a little choppy offensively early. Thought when they're at their best, it's Donovan, and he drove it for the middle 2 quarters. And then where was he in the fourth?
Exhausted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like, again, I'm tired of this rest versus rust thing. You take the rest every single time. Every time. I talked about that before, about that was a huge benefit to the teams in 2016 through 18, that stretch of era of Cavs basketball when they could sweep teams and then get off their feet. It is so important. And I don't want to hear this rest versus rust. Yes, the Knicks were out of rhythm to start the game, but they knocked that rust off fairly quickly. And look what happened. And the Cavs were out of gas at the end. So you take the rest every single time. And now here we go again. Here comes another series every other day. The Cavs really don't have a lot of time to catch their breath here.
I think the Cavs did a good job leaving Josh Hart open, begging him to shoot. It didn't hurt him much. OG's not all the way back. Like, the Cavs can win this game.
Oh, yeah.
OG looked like Luke Herringody. I mean, he missed a three that didn't hit anything.
No.
And he wanted to crawl under the court after that shot. Like, they zoomed in on him, and he was like, aliens have taken over my body. Like, it was so bad. And listen, he's a really good player, and now he could find his rhythm. He could easily find the rhythm tonight now.
Right.
But he looked awful.
No, obviously it wasn't a great OG game, and I think the Knicks will play better than they played in game 1
Yes.
because they shot so poorly from 3 for the first 40 minutes of the game. I can't imagine them shooting that poorly, but from an offensive standpoint, if you're Cleveland, they did run out of gas late. They scored 11 points total in the final 12 minutes and 49 seconds of the game. 11 points total. Jalen Brunson during that same stretch scored 17 by himself. Brunson outscored the Cavs in the final 7 minutes and change of fourth quarter and overtime by 6 points. Harden got tired. Donovan looked tired. They were settling for some shots. I thought the Cavs, and this is on Kenny, they started milking the clock way too early in the game.
I said that too.
They started with right when the run started, they started holding to about 12 to initiate their offense. They started getting worse looks. So I think in game 2 tonight, something they could look at to change is let Mobley and Allen initiate more of the offense for 2 reasons. One, I think it's been really effective when they've done that throughout the postseason. We've seen in Game 7 with Jared Allen, when you get it to him on the high post, really that foul line, just a step or two outside the foul line, he's good enough to fake handoff, spin, and take it to the rack. He's a good enough passer, too, if the help comes to kick out to the corner. Use Evan Mobley in the same situation. So it's not all on Harden, so their usage rates may be a little lower. So if they do have to play exuberant amount of minutes again, maybe in the 42nd and 43rd minute, they're a little fresher because there's 2 possessions earlier, 3 possessions earlier in the game where they haven't been as tired. And I guess the other reason, too, it's putting Cat and Brunson in more action. And just like the Cavs wore down, you can wear those guys down. And frankly, neither's a terrific defender.
Right.
I think it's a lot easier to attack Cat and Brunson than it is to attack OG, Josh Hart, Mikal Bridges. Ooh, that's super deep analysis that those are their best defenders. You don't get anywhere else but UCSS. But, that's an advantage the Cavs have offensively that I did not think they took enough advantage of in Game 1. We'd like to see them do it more tonight.
I didn't think they put Brunson in very many pick and rolls.
They tried too late. And Can you pull up the video of Brunson very bottom? The play we diagnosed the other day. I think it's the second to last video. Late in the game, they tried putting Brunson on. Here's the play. Watch Brunson on the top. He ends up hedging and not conceding the switch.
Yeah.
And they tried to do that a couple times to get the switch.
Yeah.
And the Knicks late in the game, especially in the fourth quarter, did more defensive things like that to not allow Cleveland to hunt a certain mismatch.
Yeah.
On the other end, the Cavs were like, ole, here's the red bull flag.
Right.
You want the Harden mismatch? Whoosh! And I agree with you. I agree with Kenny. Harden's defense was better than it got credit for. Brunson made some incredible shots, but the numbers are the numbers.
Right.
Like, they hunted him. Mike Brown said afterwards, we hunted Harden. That's the matchup we wanted. We got hot, and he had no ability to stop Brunson on some of these drives, and that's how the game ended.
Yeah.
So those are some adjustments.
The time management stunk. The timeout management stunk. Still, it came down to one rebound, one free throw, one stop, just one anything. And obviously, that was tied to all that. But
one play.
As soon as you let it get to overtime, you knew. And shots in the rim, and it's not. And Landry Shamit's shot is in, out, and back in.
And Merrill's shot was in, out,
Halfway
in,
Yeah.
and out.
Yeah.
One other thing to watch tonight. So Merrill started overtime, right?
Yeah.
I believe the reason they went with Merrill over Strus there was Merrill had made shots.
Yep.
And Max struggled offensively.
Yeah.
And they need that spacing if they're playing with both bigs. If Strus can make a couple shots, that's Strus in the game instead of Merrill. Strus is I don't want to say a much better on-ball defender, because Merrill, I think, is an underrated defender. But Strus presents more problems for Brunson, especially navigating through screens, than Merrill does. The Cavs need Strus. If it's not going to be Wade, they need Strus to make shots, to provide the spacing, and actually be able to make those shots while also giving them the defensive advantage on Brunson.
You think they changed the lineup tonight? I was surprised they stuck with Dean.
I was too, and he played well, so I think they go back to it.
I think they might. I don't know. Maybe it's wishful thinking. I think they might change it. Again, I'm a big Dean fan in the lineup for a lot of matchups.
I said I would have started Strus in game one.
Yeah, I would have too.
But I thought Wade played well enough that
I mean, he made shots. Zach's right.
He made more threes than.
Yeah. Well, I'm curious.
Mitchell
So, like, if
Harden.
James plays less for whatever reason, for mental reasons or for ball screen coverage reasons, like, who is it? Schroeder more? Is it Sam more? Like,
So,
that's what I'm curious
We
about.
talked about this yesterday. We don't have to dive back in. I know we got to wrap in a sec. They kept attacking Harden because he was in the game. Schroeder was 1 for 9 from the floor. Kenny didn't trust Dennis Schroeder.
Yeah.
Max Strus wasn't making shots. Donovan was tired. They needed somebody to initiate offense. That's why they left Harden in so long. I don't think Kenny trusted anyone else to put them in a position to operate offense late in the shot clock. And that's the other end of the spectrum and the backside of trying to milk the clock with 7 minutes to go. You are at such a tight window to generate good looks at that point that you kind of need a James Harden, whether it's in the pick and roll or the isolation, because you don't trust Tyson, you don't trust Ellis, you don't trust Schroeder, you don't trust Strus in those situations. Merrill's not creating for himself, and Donovan wasn't the same Donovan in the fourth quarter as he was in the first three.
But you can't play Harden 17 straight. He's 37 years old.
I agree
and
with
he's
that.
a hooper.
Yeah.
He's a hooper, and like he can play heavy minutes. You can't play him 17 straight. And plus, I didn't look to see if he closed the end of the third. I just know he played the entire fourth and overtime. He might have been out there for the end of the third as well. I'm not sure.
Played 46 minutes in the game?
Yeah, I think that's right.
Yeah, I mean, he played a lot for an old guy
Yeah.
who's
You
not
got
the same MVP.
You got to give him a break.
Yeah.
So.
All right, we're going to talk with Chris Renkel coming up in a little bit from New York City ahead of Game 2. We're going to talk about who has to be the MVP for the Cavs if they're going to win Game 2 and whether or not they can come back from an 0-2 deficit if it does not go their way like they did against Detroit coming up later